Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the way the media covers migrant riots and bombing sprees, knifing sprees, widespread arson, within a street riot, one assumes, but any sort of mass event by these third world peasants are being brought into the West, any sort of mass event, is it covered in the media at all? If it is covered, is it clothed in something else entirely to obfuscate or distract, or is it just thoroughly and totally misrepresented? Now, in fact, all three are occurring, but the only way I can now find out about these, or anyone for that matter, find out about these riots, some of which involve many hundreds of people, bombs going off, cars being torched, bystanders being stabbed and beaten or even murdered, and the list goes on. So it's a major event that, if in any other circumstance, it would be headline news. If a white guy stabs a few people, it is international headline news for days. But if the black-brown migrant does it, then you just don't get to hear about it, which just shows how dishonest, how thoroughly dishonest the globalist controlled media is. But everything to support the narrative and nothing to support the facts is how they operate. But I can only find out about these things now online from people posting on social media. That's the only way. The mainstream media that should be reporting on it don't. Now, there are some cases where they do report on it, but you wouldn't know it was a riot. For example, there was a major riot in, I think it was Sweden, and there was actually a small story on one of Australia's biggest mainstream media websites. There was a small story about it, but it was written in such a way that you wouldn't have known it was a riot, that it was described as there were some minor disturbances in a Swedish town, or city in this case. And this was only because people had some grievances in regard to racism and far right and Nazis, Hitler, and as if there was some minor pushback disturbance type going on, but it was only because Hitler personally was oppressing them, and they were pushing back against this evil fascist, Nazi, racist, white supremacist regime, and they were justified in doing so. But nothing much really happened, a couple of bit of littering on the done on the sidewalk, and maybe a few harsh words, but nothing. No big deal. And whatever it was fully justified, because these people were fighting back against Nazis, fucking fascist Nazis, white supremacists. Now, when you actually look at the facts, you've got to sort of go to even a local newspaper, because it's on the ground, everyone's seen it. They tend to be more honest than the mainstream broadcasters, even though they are still quite delicate around it. But and then you find out that there were several hundred people, multiple cars were torched, a bomb was set off, a hand grenade or some hand grenades were thrown, guns were discharged, knives were pulled out, there were dead bodies and so on. And you go, holy smokes, this is big news. This is a major issue, and nor is it the first. These riots are happening on a regular basis. Now, so let's now go to the mainstream media coverage in Europe and Sweden. So we've gone from a local newspaper that's tend mostly, at least, report the actual facts on the ground, again, because they can't not do it. Too many people have seen it, I heard it. So, and then go to the mainstream media stations in Sweden and how they cover it. Now, this is the mainstream media that most people in the bigger cities are going to look at. So they've got far more latitude to narrative editorialize and ignore the facts. So they employ these strange circular arguments. Now, the first is they'll mention the riot, but they don't mention that there's any migrants involved or it's black and brown people exclusively. There's no white people in sight. It's exclusively black and brown people. This one's in Sweden, and they don't mention that. They just say young men. Young men were rioting. Well, that's a misrepresentation. If it was young men generally of all races, and then maybe you could do that. But clearly they're purposefully avoiding saying that it's migrants. The second thing they say is they get some lesbian sociologist to come on and say, well, these sort of disturbances, they occur all over Sweden and all socioeconomic groups, even the richest suburbs in Sweden have just as many grenades and shootings and knifings on the street as do the very poorest suburbs. There's no mention that 90% plus are in exclusively in the areas that are like 100% migrant, and there's a few in the periphery, but it's still these black and brown peasant migrants having shootouts in the street outside of their own immediate area of residence. So that, again, all that's taken out. That so someone's had to sit down and say, well, let's not say this because it'll be bad for the globalization project. Let's not say that. That'll be bad for the globalization project. So they're sanitizing the actuality and using all sorts of different language. So an exclusively black brown rioting has become just young men. And that it's exclusively or almost exclusively in those migrant areas has been changed to say it's happening everywhere, which again is an absolute bald-faced lie. And of course they don't say that this is a lesbian gender studies academic activist who's a mass migration advocate and who's being paid through by NGOs and other people to tell the most outrageous lies. That isn't represented. They just bring this person on to be the professional. The experts have said, but again, yet another bald-faced lie. So they're just determined to remove all debate. Now, so what's the answer? Another expert comes in. What's the answer to stop these riots, which we has been told is just young men, hasn't been told that it's haven't been told the facts that it's black and brown peasants from the third world that won't fit in, refuse to fit in, and all that sort of stuff, refuse to assimilate, are encouraged by the very authorities that whinge and moan about young men, that they're allowed to be multicultural. You don't have to assimilate or fit in. Nah. You do exactly what you did when you came, when you're in your home country. Well, we used to riot and kill people and knife people. Yeah, go ahead. I mean, just to do your thing. So the answer here is it to stop migration? No. Is it to stop multiculturalism? What's the answer to these riots? Is it to have vigorous policing, so anyone caught, found to have a knife on them or explosives or grenade gets immediately arrested? House searches of known suspects. No, that would be racist. You fucking fascist Nazi. It'd be racist to do that. What we have to do is we have to bring lesbian gender studies academics into the classroom and teach all young men that they must show more respect, and that'll fix it. And so then there's a quick shot of a very lesbian-looking teacher showing a middle-class, well-dressed white boy that he's got to show more respect, because if you show the teacher doing this to a black kid, then it would be more fucking racism, more examples of fucking fascist Nazis, Hitler. So they're off on the wrong track there, and willfully and purposefully so, that they're going to get all these black and brown people, mostly Islamic, not all, into a classroom and finger wag, get some lesbian gender studies, whatever, to finger wag them and say, naughty boys, you've got to show more respect. and that's really going to change things. But the people you have to really get at isn't those migrants. It's those middle class white boys, those damn straight white male misogynist fascist Nazis. They're really the ones that need this education. Damn fucking fascist Hitler. So again, willfully missing the point. Now, the next thing that they have to do, how else can you stop these riots? Well, you get lesbians to do gender studies, respect in the classroom. That's really going to do it. And the next thing is, well, it's really there are too many white police. We've got to get rid of white male, too many males and too many white people in the police. We've got to get rid of white males out of the police, and that'll fix it. So, when they're doing policing in these migrant areas, what they want to see is people that look like them. That's going to fix it. That'll nail it. That'll make them respect authority and go, okay. But 50% of those brown and black people in those brown and black areas, they have to be female police officers. So it shows those boys to respect women. That'll fix it. Here we go. Wow. Social engineering, done. We've nailed it. So how are we going to achieve this? The amount of black and brown people that apply for jobs in the police force is, like 2% or something. Hardly any women at all. Not a problem. We'll go on a recruitment drive. We'll say to these black and brown people, particularly the females, that we guarantee you a place in the police force. But I won't pass the exam. It doesn't matter. I won't pass the physical. Who cares? We just want black and we're into affirmative action here. We just want social engineering black and brown people in the police force, and we don't give a fuck if they would have passed the acceptance tests and fitness tests or not. We don't care about that. That's just bullshit. That's white boy talk. Passing exams and doing fitness, meeting a standard. That's white boy talk. That's fascist talk. Hitler would talk that way. We just want to do that. We're talking equity here. We're talking affirmative action. Let's get an equal number of black and brown officers there, an equal number of women. That'll fix the problem. Suddenly, these riotous young men, the black and brown migrants, all of them young, by the way, will suddenly decide that, oh, wow, okay, we respect authority, we respect this society. It'll just magically happen. And if have you got a problem with that, you damn fascist Nazi? So they're just going to pass them through college on affirmative action and more, all on non-merit. And by the way, in the process, getting rid of competent, qualified white men. That's really the answer here. You can see where this is going. So the other thing is they want to show women in a powerful. This is brown, black women police officers in a powerful light. So they should have 3 big burly male officers. They capture some man, and then they stand by threatening to beat the shit out of the black guy, while the brown black female officer arrests him, puts on the cuffs. That'll show how powerful women, and that'll really get these. That won't cause resentment or anything like that. That'll just teach these young men respect. So I don't think that's really going to work somehow. Now they're obviously trying very hard to make sure there is not a single negative take on what is a very negative event that deserves proper factual and very negative coverage and scathing editorial about the failures of mass migration and multiculturalism. But that would go against the globalist project. And the globalist, the mainstream media is globalist controlled, and they are paid specifically to support the globalist project. So they're not going to say anything negative about all this because it would raise questions that they don't want to answer and can't answer, such as the outright failure of mass migration and multiculturalism. But that's what they're doing, and that's why we don't see it. So I really have to go, or anyone would have to go digging around to find not only that these events are occurring, and they're occurring all over, Paris and Berlin and Sweden, London, happening all over the place. where these very, very entitled black and brown people who've been given free housing, free this, free that, free everything, still aren't satisfied. We want more and more. Now, we need to look at the cultural thing, which isn't being dealt with, that most of these people come from cultures where any sign of wealth is held very narrowly. You know, we're looking at one in every several thousand people is well-to-do. There are tiny microscopic middle class people in these places that these peasants come from. So the chances in your community of seeing someone who's got something that you don't have, as in a material possession, that sort of thing, is pretty rare. It's fairly difficult. Because pretty much everyone's equally poor in those societies. This is why a lot of these people have come to the West, because they perceive there's a lot more wealth in the West, which is true. But there are reasons there are more wealth in the West. The wealth creation concept is something these people don't understand. Most of them come from villages, the black people in particular, but even like the North Africans, they come from villages where possessions and wealth is communally owned. And if you don't have your preordained position in society, when they leave their society and come to the West, they lose that preordained sort of outlook on life, and their status in the society becomes fluid. A lot of them can't handle that, by the way. It causes them great anxiety, which you see manifesting in riots and so on. But the other side of it is that they have a shared wealth concept. Again, more the black people, but even again, the North Africans, they have a shared wealth concept that the village owns everything. And the idea of somebody would have a lot and not share it with the others is almost unthinkable. In fact, it's a slight, it's a slur, it's an act of disrespect in itself to your fellow tribal village citizens. So they come to the West and see these people in nice houses and nice cars, but aren't the people who are in charge. They're not the people at the apex. They're not the tribal chief that has those things, where it may be permissible. It's just ordinary people who've worked hard and been sensible and prudent with their money, or that sort of thing. And these people, these third world peasant migrants, they see this as intolerable. Why has that person got so much? They're not powerful. They're not the tribal chieftain. They're not the big heavyweight folks. How come they've got so much and I don't? There must be something wrong with the society, so I'm going to riot and I'm going to burn that motherfucker's car and so on. So they've got a very different view of how wealth is developed and made and shared and so on. The idea of having, working slowly all your life and saving and behaving sensibly and that sort of thing, that's something that they, in the arc of time that they perceive in their reality, they just can't comprehend that. So they become disgruntled and quite unpleasant when they don't get what they think they should have, or why has the other guy got it and I don't have it, that sort of thing. And this is where the riots are coming from. And the multicultural society in the West generally is simply not dealing with these things. And these are the things that must be dealt with if there's going to be any sort of successful assimilation at any level. You've been a Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening. Honey Bundle.